Brakataya Howell, Brakataya Shai, Brakataya Howell, Brakataya Shai, Brakataya Howell, Brakataya Howell, Bashim Yahushai, Bahashim, Rakakwadash, the blindness of the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone, which you well. Salutations to the hopeful elect out there. You Akim to Sadakim that do this thing in the utmost truth and sincerity. On the pre-Shaman, this is going to be a response to Apostle Elder Tahar's video, Universal Basic Income. What say you? In a nutshell, answering the Apostle. I'm not for it. In terms of what I would do with that money, I got quite a few ideas, but the first thing primarily I'll do is pay my tithes. And as according to what will become of it, it depends on how they go about it. If they have the feds print this money, it would of course lead to, well, I cannot predict inflation. It should lead to inflation, but we live in a debt-based society, not a productive-based society. So no one could truly predict inflation per se, but it should lead to inflation because what would happen is, 300 million average times 2,000 is 600 billion. 600 billion times 12 a year, you're looking at 7.2 trillion. So they're trying to push this agenda. It's a twist of a concept that we do in the Bible. I'm going to go ahead and read it. This is Leviticus 19:9. And when ye reap the harvest of your land, thou shalt not wholly reap the corners of thy field, neither shalt thou gather the gleanings of thy harvest. Right? So when you would plant something into the ground in hopes to get back gain or capital, you have to leave some of your capital, some of your excess for the poor and needy. So they're trying to take this concept, and that's how normally social benefits and social welfare and these types of things works, is where, like, if they were to implement this without the feds, like how they normally do social welfare, is they'll either have to raise taxes or get the money through personal debts and small business debt loans. And taxes is pretty much taking the excess capital and having the state decide what they want to do with it. Verse 10, and thou shalt not glean thy vineyard, neither shalt thou gather every grape of thy vineyard. Thou shalt leave them for the poor and stranger. I am the Lord Yahweh Shem your power. And the apostle did mention that MSNBC is the left, if they will, as they call it, democratic, and they have certain socialistic views. I'm going to quickly do the definition of the socialism according to WordNet. I'm going to jump to the second definition because it's what I want to discuss pertaining to an economy. So socialist economy, an economic system based on state ownership of capital. So the state owns your capital, the government owns your capital, and they do with it as they will. So we partly already have that now. Universal basic income was tried before during the Soviet Union. It didn't work, and they're trying to bring it back now, man. And that's what happened. It would pretty much be a wealth transfer. That's how socialist stuff work. When you pay Social Security, you're transferring part of your wealth to the elderly generation that was previous. That's what government deficit spending is, when the government takes money and pump it into the economy. Like they're doing now. Like they're doing now. And I also want to mention the fact that they're doing this now is nothing new. Certain people already knew this was coming beat for beat as it's going, because we live in a debt-based society, and in a debt-based society, you're going to have cycles. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight the next screenshot of a video. This video is an interview with Ray Dalio back in 2016. It was 4 years ago, I'm sorry. Yeah, so 4 years ago, back in 2016, here's the title of the video. Central banks will go so desperate they will give money away. That was on Forex Live. It's an interesting video. Is Ray Dalio a prophet? No, he's not. He just understands debt cycles. So if somebody's prophesying, oh, this is going to crash, that's going to crash. I told you it crashed. Anybody's that's bound to happen. It's just a cycle. That's like me saying, yeah, yo, you're gonna use the bathroom, watch, and then you eventually use the bathroom because there's a cycle with your food system, with your body. So what we're in right now is something called a long-term debt cycle, very familiar to 1932. Exactly, beat for beat is 1932, printing more money with lower interest rates. It's a system called deleveraging, and it doesn't always lead to hyperinflation. The goal ultimately is to put more money in people's pockets to generate wealth. You give somebody wealth, that's another man's income. That's the whole meaning behind what they're doing. Also, want to go to Deuteronomy, the 24th chapter, the 19th verse. When thou cuttest down thine harvest in thy field, and hast forgot a sheaf in the field, thou shalt not go again to fetch it. So we understand that this concept is in the scripture. So I'm in it. I'm in the form of what they would call socialism, right? Um, the scripture is, of course, we're pro scriptures. We're pro this law. This law is going to always be around because the poor will always be around. And in the kingdom of heaven, we're not going to be poor, but other nations will be poor, and they will be keeping this law. So this concept will always be around, right? But what they have done is they've perverted it. They perverted this concept in the form of abusing it and using ways to generate people being lazy, you know, and dependent on the government. Isaiah 31, woe to them that go down to Egypt for help, because look at how the welfare system works, which I'm against because that was designed to destroy families, right? The Negro family, the Native American family, you put welfare in the system, it breaks up the family. You don't have a father in the house because you're trying to accommodate to get the welfare benefits that also breeds degenerates. These things are done by design. And I think universal basic income will do the same thing, man. All right, because you got to remember, it's not, if they taken it from, if it's done through deficit spending, which most social programs are, you got to understand that's not free. Just like Obamacare, it's federal. That's how come when it got passed, they wiped out small businesses that did private healthcare practices and socialized major businesses, and they pretty much did a wipeout, you know, which most people argue that healthcare should be private, schools should be private, and it will drop the cost of things. And I agree with that, because you have LASIK eye surgery. When it first came out, it was like $24,000. Now it's very cheap because it's not subsidized by the government, and you have room for competition, and competition creates better products, and creates competition and less prices. So it says, when thou cuttest down thine harvest in thy field, and hast forgot a sheaf in the field, thou shalt not go again to fetch it. It shall be for the stranger, for the fatherless, and for the widow, that the Lord Yahweh Shem Yahshua thy power may bless thee in all the work of thine hands. So again, this is sort of a perverted version of what the scriptures has. And you have to remember, even back then when this was being written, you had people taking advantage of this concept. So I'm gonna read that. We have account of that people were, like, in other words, if I had a field, and and the Lord blessed me with a field that will constantly produce an excess amount, my neighbor who's having a hard time might just say, "Fuck it, I'm just gonna mooch off you," and I'm bound to the law. So this guy's gonna just keep gleaning. So he's gonna give up. And you know what he might do? He might tell his friends, like, "Yo, man, look, man, fuck that shit. You don't gotta plow. You don't gotta plant seeds. This dude will just take his shit and glean his excess." And best believe Jake was doing that, man. Just like how now they take, or try to take advantage to the best of their ability of welfare and wicked and all this type of shit. They were doing the same thing with this system, and you could see how people could easily take advantage of it. And it was reproached amongst certain Israelites back then. We're going to go into the scripture to prove that. Oh, like I missed the verse 20. It says, when thou beatest thine olive tree, thou shalt not go over the boughs. Again, it shall be for the stranger, for the fatherless, and for the widow. Yeah, So the concept in its purest form is a righteous thing. You're supposed to be abundantly support your people, you know? But again, you take advantage of, you have people that have social benefits, right? That will use EBTs to go to a wholesaler, buy a whole bunch of sodas, empty the soda, which are, not supposed to be drinking no soda, but empty the soda and recycle the cans. And that, where did that money come from? It came from the taxpayer. So you have certain people that oppose it, and they will. You have certain people that would oppose this universal basic income. Pretty much the right would oppose it. Certain people on the left would oppose it. Um, so as I was trying to gather information on universal basic income, I already knew what the right would say about it. So I had to watch different debates and these types of stuff to understand that. Look, okay, the way they'll do it is through social program. So this thing has been sort of dead on arrival since for a very long time because they tried it. Socialism for the most part, it just doesn't, the way how Esau and these nations do it, it just doesn't succeed, man. Because you can't have people like Bezos and Mark Zuckerberg and big capitalistic people that came up with things that benefit their society. You can't have that with socialism. You don't have it in China. You don't have it, and it fucked up Russia. It fucked up Cuba. You know what I'm saying? The way the government implements it. So this will be met with heavy resistance, man. This will definitely be met with heavy resistance if they try to push this thing. This is the book of Ruth, chapter 2, verse 2. And Ruth, the Moabite, said unto Naomi, let me now go to the field and glean ears of corn after him in whose sight I shall find grace. And she said unto her, go, my daughter. So we see that Ruth, which was on the poorer side, wanted to do this. She was sincere. She wanted to see who could show her favor in giving her a bit of excess on their capital. And you had a man by the name of Boaz, which is all set up in the spirit, by the way, because this whole ultimate relationship will lead to our king, David. I'm going to jump to 15. It says that when she was risen up to glean, Boaz commanded his young men, saying, let her glean. So Boaz said, no, let her do it. It's cool, even among the sheaves, and reproach her not. So you see that a lot of, let's just say, I don't want to say how many times, but you can see how this could be met with reproach. And you have Boaz servants, all right? Because Boaz was a wealthy individual. He had property, land, he had farm. And his servants, he had servants. Oh my. That's one of the best things you could have is servants, man. Even the sheaves and reproach her not. So, yeah, So this thing was met with reproach. Now, if they do start giving $2,000 a month, $2,000 a month, certain things I would avoid would be I would try to just advise brothers, pay your 10% and don't get Jordans and stuff, but try to come up with ways to make the money work for you, come up with ways to make money work for you, not work against you. But if you can find a way to make it work for you, make it work for you. I'm not gonna give too much financial advice in this video because I'm here to prophesy first and foremost. But that's what I would recommend. Please don't get a big screen TV. Don't get, just use wisdom with it if they do that. But again, I doubt they would do this because it will be met with a lot of approach. This is an angle that the Democrats would use to get votes. Like AOC pushes this, Alexandria Acosta. You had Andrew Yang. He was also big on this. Let's just give everybody $1,000 a month. Bernie Sanders is saying the same shit. This is a leftist view to get votes, but once you research it, you see why it was never really, never really caught traction. Because eventually it will doom a society. Acts 26:11. For ye have the poor always with you, but me ye have not always. So Yahushua said, look, the poor is going to always be amongst you. There's no act of bill or nothing you can pass to get rid of the poor. 1 Samuel 2:6, the Most High creates the poor. So they're going to always be around. All right. They were here from the beginning of the time. They're going to be here from the end of the time. Again, in the kingdom of heaven, we're not going to be poor. Every Israelite is going to be rich. But amongst these heathen nations, you're going to have the poor that's going to enact this law. And we already know that Esau is going to be all types of poor. The so-called white man in the kingdom of heaven. So the poor is always going to be there no matter what plan these government people try to come up with, the poor is always going to be there. You know, everybody can't be rich, so they try to the government try to sell you on that. Just know that there's an angle to it, right? All right. So this is Deuteronomy 15 and 11. For the poor shall never cease out of the land. And one thing I did mention about Boaz was wealthy, right? And that's when I say wealthy is I mean so the difference between being rich is you can have a lot of things in terms of price, but do you have value and or is your value accumulated while you sleep? That's true wealth. One of these rich Edomites said, "Look, man, if you can't make money while you sleep, you're gonna be working forever." So Boaz was wealthy because he had people working for him, producing things. He had ownership, and that's how you become wealthy, man. You own things, and that's what Edomites do. They own things. I also want to use the example of King Solomon. So King Solomon had gold, silver, and all these things. If he was to transport all that to now, he would maintain his wealth. The price of what he owned would go up because that's just price. So that's how come when you read about him, they net him at a couple $1 trillion. When you watch YouTube's on King Solomon wealth, they adjust it for inflation. That price is just price. That's just rich. But the wealth is the assets and all the things that he owned that will continue to produce that wealth, and that's what Esau seeks. So that's how come you see Edomites they say things like they don't really buy gold and stuff like that, because if you buy gold, gold currently has a PE ratio of about 10, meaning you're gonna get back your money in about 10 years, man. Because it moves very slowly, but it does move, right? But it's not really an asset per se. You can't leave your gold there and it's gonna make you more money. So they tend to find other ways to accumulate their wealth. But yeah, I'm just throwing ideas at brothers. Just throwing ideas at brothers. As the apostle said, what would you do with it? So I wouldn't really buy actual gold right now. Thou shalt open thine hand wide unto thy brother. So like, for the poor shall never cease out of the land. Therefore I command thee, saying, thou shalt open thy hand wide unto thy brother. So you open up your hand wide unto your brother. Matthew 12 and 50, them that do the will of the Lord. So we have this system amongst ourselves. We do enact this law. We have tithes, we have alms, we have offerings, because look, not every brother in the camp is a balance, all right? When you go throughout the camps, you're going to have John the Baptist and you're going to have Joseph of Arimathea, right? They're going to have to deal with their finances differently. One could be more abundant with giving and one might not have it so, right? So the Lord gives us this balance, right? So we do that amongst ourselves. Hey, Doc, I'm up right now. What you need, Hey, don't worry about that. I got you, brother. I got a little bit of extra. Yeah, I got this little stimulus. You might have not got the stimulus. Let me help you out. You know what I'm saying? So we do these things amongst ourselves, being charitable because the scriptures say so. But brothers don't try to take advantage of brothers, we don't try to be walking ATMs. Like prime example, what happened in the IUIC, you had somebody that was called a pocket. And if you do that approach, just the way you're just, blindly giving, it could breed irresponsibility. Not to be confused with being brotherly, because again, scriptures say that every brother will supplant. So you do have people that will see that and take advantage, and they will become irresponsible. So there is also limitations to how we go about it here. And we had individuals that came amongst us and did that shit, but the Lord weeded them out because they weren't sincere. And the Most High knows every man's heart. For the poor shall never cease out of the land. Therefore I command thee, saying, thou shalt open thine hand wide unto thy brother, to the poor, and to the needy in thy land. So pursuant to Matthew 12 and 50, we help each other out, man. We try to do the best for each other, beyond just physical money, but we could help brothers out, man. Brothers might be poor in faith, all right? They might be poor in other things, but we apply the law the same way. These people up here, they're not trying to do that, man. With this concept of universal basic income. Yeah, it's a nice way to sound to people that don't understand it, and they target Jake with these types of things. They target Jake with welfare and Wicks and all this type of shit because Jake really does. They just see it as Jake kind of just see it as free money, so that incentivizes a lot of Jakes to kind of just sit on their ass, or because what's the point of going to work for $15 an hour or $13 an hour or $9 an hour. Depending on your state, your minimum wage is different. If the government could give you more money than you would make at the job, right? That's their concept. That's the idea. So Esau knows what he's doing when he does things like that. He's trying to create a individual that is very dependent on the government. And I think that's detrimental to our people, man. All right. If you look up the history, so called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans were doing better in the 1950s when they were trying to avoid the trap of the welfare system than they are doing now. They're more dependent now, and it hasn't done anything better for them. It actually crippled us, man, put us in a worse state. And there's documentaries on YouTube if you like to look that up. It says, therefore I command thee, saying, thou shalt open thine hand wide unto thy brother to the poor, and to the needy in the land. And of the brother, oh, Salakia. Yeah, that's just the point I wanted to make. So we have to be open handed, generous to the brotherhood, man. Okay. So answering the apostle question, if what would I do with this money if they give me $2,000 per month? I would do things to hedge myself against inflation if they print it with the Federal Reserve, because the Federal Reserve is not part of the government. Federal, they're about as Federal Express. They're a private institution, so they do go that route. So they don't have to necessarily do this. You know, this a concept again. Universal basic income is social, right? It's government. The Treasury is responsible for government, right? They print cash. The Feds print digital fiat. So if they go that route, I'll do things to hedge myself against inflation. Okay. And if you watch this dude right here that I mentioned him, he actually has methods to not only hedge yourself, but to actually profit from a situation if that was to happen. Um, so that's what I'll do, and I, of course, pay my tights, and yeah, find ways to make that money turn into more money. If they go with the social program way of it, you know, then I already know that's going to be coming out of my pockets, which would suck. But I know that will be met with a lot of resistance, you know. So that's what we will do with it. What will be the outcome of it? Can't say printing more money will lead to inflation because with this society, the way that again, this is a debt-based cycle society. All right, it's not based on productivity. We can't predict for sure if the currency would inflate, man. If you looked at all this money printing that's been going on, you'd think the dollar would be going down. In fact, the dollar went up because it is the world reserve currency. All right. And it's not due to the fact that the dollar is tied to oil. It's not a petrodollar situation, you know. India and Japan, I mean, Japan and India don't trade in US dollars and nothing happened, you know, because again, it's just currency. It's just convenience to transfer currency. But the reason the dollar went up is because it's the world reserve currency. And if the dollar goes up, gold doesn't move or goes down. So printing more US dollars doesn't always lead to hyperinflation, but it is also a possibility. All right. So, like Zimbabwe, as the apostle hinted to, they had $1 trillion. They had $1 trillion bills. So they had dollars, but they didn't have any true wealth. You could increase price, but you can't just fluctuate value. So with that, I'm going to give all praises to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushua, Ba'ashem Rakal Kodash, double honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Mills, true well. And salutations to the hopeful elect out there, you Akim to Sadakim, that do this thing in the utmost truth and sincerity. Shalom.